I'd like to welcome and introduce our guest, Carla Rae Taylor. Carla is a multifaceted artist who has a passion for telling stories through her paintings, murals, and illustrations. She grew up in Yellowknife, close to the land, and her work are often inspired by nature and dreams. Now living on 36, she has been painting the stories of Edmonton's diverse cultural communities into large-scale murals. Her love of connecting with diverse people and cultures also extends those facing extreme social barriers. Carving out spaces for marginalized voices to tell their stories through art has been an important part of her work. She strongly believes in the healing power of art and enjoys bringing colorful images of hope and inspiration to forgotten places in need and of revitalization. Carla, thank you for being with us today, and I turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Nexi, and for everyone who is here today. It really is such an honor to be here as your human book. I am so incredibly excited about this book. It's been such a long journey, and it's unbelievable that it's actually all come together in this beautiful piece. And actually reading through it, it brought so many tears to my eyes because there's been so much learning. There's been some challenges. It's just been an incredible journey. I remember the first day, I think it was probably 2017 when we had our first meeting, I think January, February, around then. And my son was teeny tiny, he was just born, and I brought him to the first meeting. And I just remember that feeling of being offered this opportunity as a mother of two young children. And it was so wonderful to have JHC approach me. At the time I was working for iHuman Youth Society as their art coordinator and working with youth that were living in the streets and teaching art and learning from them as well, really, through the journey. But I remember them approaching me and just like having a really profound respect for an organization that was willing to work with a young mother of two small babies and to be flexible and to take my work seriously as a mother. It was a really important part of how the piece began. And so throughout the past 5 years, I have had the opportunity to work on 4 different murals with JHC. So the 5th one was taken on by lead artist AJ Loudon. But the first one was Churchill Station, and it was entitled Returning Home. And it was a tribute to missing and murdered Indigenous women of Canada. And it was painted in honor of women, but also in honor of returning everybody home safely. So at the time, ETS had a campaign about making sure that everybody who took their transit system returned home safely. So we kind of amalgamated the 2 ideas and came up with Returning Home. And I worked on that with Dana Belcourt, and she was an amazing emerging artist, and it was an honor to be with her on that project. And she really connected with the idea of the moon cycles and water, something I'm connected with, like the idea of women and cycles. And so we incorporated that into the piece as well. The second one was University Station. And we had a chance to sit down with knowledge keepers, local knowledge keepers, and Indigenous storytellers. There's Dwayne Donald and Wilson Bearhead, and they shared so many amazing stories. It really was incredible to sit down with Edmonton's First Nations and Indigenous people, elders, and hear some of the stories of how life was a long time ago. And so we got to incorporate some of those stories into the murals as well. That one focused mainly on animals that are important to the people and to the land. There was the woodpecker, that's the symbol of the Papa's chase, Papa's Deo. I believe it is. And there's the buffalo and the bear. And there are so many stories about medicine and about, the animals that would sustain the people, like the buffalo. I remember Dwayne Donald saying that it was education is the new buffalo. It's like the thing that carries youth and people forward into the world and provides for your families. And because at the time in the past, the buffalo would provide everything from clothing to food to warmth. So he is a knowledge keeper and professor. So he liked to make that connection between the buffalo and education, and just stressing how important for youth and young people to follow that path of education. And then after that, I got to partake in the Corona Station, the Kingsway mural. And that was kind of more faith-based. So we got to connect with the Shiloh Baptist Church and the Temple Beth Ora and the Al Rashid Mosque, and sit down with these various communities and learn about their spiritual practices, about their cultural customs, and even share some of their foods, which was amazing and delicious. And it was just so wonderful to be welcomed so warmly by all these different communities. And so we took those stories to heart. And something that came up in that mural in particular was the idea of light. So if you look closely at the mural, you'll see different elements of light that come up. And the idea of light is also around this idea of luminaries and kind of higher thinking, thinking about life and spirituality, and shedding light on different philosophies. So it's not just light in the physical form, but also in this idea of speculating on life and philosophizing as an important part of being human and digging deeper into who we are. So that was Kingsway, and I got to work on that with AJ Loudon and Dana Belcourt and Matthew Cardinal. And it was a great process, super fun. Lots of difficult work with moving the scaffolding all around, but that's part of the journey as well. There's some challenges there. It can be arduous work to paint a mural, but definitely fulfilling. The next one is Corona Station, and that was Strong as a Forest. And we got to sit down with the Métis community and the Francophone community and Ukrainian community, and the stories are plentiful of how people came to this land. And there's so many stories of connection with the Indigenous people, actually. And so there's elements of, like the cross between the French and the Indigenous people and the Métis. And I remember there was a story shared about how the women provided, I think it was 300-400 pairs of mucklucks and moccasins for the French men who are coming in on canoes, the voyageurs. And there's so many stories that just deepened my experience of being here on this land. And I remember in the Ukrainian community, they stressed the importance of learning about the plants. And, they're very, very much an agricultural people, and they were developing the land, as were the Francophone people as well. Like, this idea of rich land was very important, the dark soil that you can plant seeds into. So if you look throughout the mural, you'll see elements of that and stories of how these different cultures and peoples came to be on our land, and how the stories have woven together to create this cultural fabric and this beautiful history of who we are as a city. And personally, it has really deepened my experience of being here. I walk through the streets, and I remember these stories that have been told to me and to us, and through the river valley. And it sheds a new light on being here. And yeah, it just really, the whole project just kind of blew my mind wide open. And I really encourage others who are on the path of art and life just to continue to try to hear the stories, like find the stories that are around you. I think it's important. I think a big important part of this whole journey has been this idea of cultural diversity. So it really is a gift to live in such a culturally diverse country, and learning about each other is a really important part of changing our future. So I think, as we all know, there's so much trauma and pain that's been held, that's been caused by, different groups not accepting each other. And what's cool about being young is you have this opportunity to change the future. And, it doesn't mean that just because something was at one point, doesn't mean you have to carry that forward. I think it's really important to realize that, especially for the students that are here today, to remember to just continue to question and appreciate our friends that are different from us, and ask them questions about their lives and about their families. And I think it's important to continue learning. We can learn so much about each other's customs and foods, and do we have different ceremonial garments, or do we have practices or spiritual practices? And just continue to ask questions. It's so important to learn about each other and about the world. It creates a sense of acceptance, and it can create acceptance and understanding of each other. And it's a really important part of changing the future. So that kind of brings me to this idea of art as activism. So I love art in all its different forms. There's art that is historical, there's art that's just for beauty, there's art that, and something that's important to me on my journey is this idea of art and activism. And that's something that I'd love for the students here today to kind of think about, is this idea of, what is important to you? For me, activism means, what are the things in the world that you can see that are maybe out of balance or unjust, and how can I speak to those topics? And how can I speak to those topics using my art? And it really opens up a huge platform, both music and art, to speak your thoughts on various topics, especially ones that, we need to shed light on, that we need to discuss further. And so art and activism, cultural diversity, all these topics have come up throughout the project. Another one is identity. So as we question, as we look to our friends and our communities and explore the various stories and the various ways of being, we can also kind of turn that inside and become more introspective and kind of ask those questions about ourselves. Where do I come from? Where is my family from? Is my family from a different country? How did we come here? Am I from this country? Maybe we're a blend of both. It's so fascinating to dig deep into your roots and just figure out who you are. What languages do you speak? What foods are important? What are our celebrations that are meaningful? And I think the more we learn about ourselves and each other, the more acceptance we can create and work towards societies that are, more accepting and compassionate. And it doesn't mean that you have to like everybody all the time. It means that we can learn about each other to create this understanding and acceptance, and learn to communicate from a place of mutual respect instead of places of trauma, being triggered and reacting from places of trauma. But, creating open dialogue where people can have difference of opinion, but also the ability to communicate respectfully and share this idea that we can have different opinions and different ways of seeing life, but also have respectful communication and come to different solutions on how we can address whatever issues are in our community or in our, in our world. So I know that's a bit of a tangent, but this really, all of these topics and things have come up through the journey of painting murals. And JHC has facilitated the project so beautifully. There's so many members that have contributed so much, back resources and filming and logistics and like bringing all the communities together. And it's been a fantastic orchestration of a beautiful project. And to see it come to this fruition and to be celebrated through a book is really so beautiful. So I just want to say thank you to everyone who's participated, and it really is an honor to be a part of it.